Unscripted. We are streaming live today and have a special guest with us, Dr. Yulia Bushnell. Dr. Bushnell is CEO of Bushnell Human Resources Consulting, BHRC, a premier leader of human resources outsourcing for nonprofits and small to medium sized business owners. Today, she will be sharing her expertise on the key tip for job searches in 2025. Check her out on Facebook. You can search her by searching Bushnell Human Resources Consulting, BHRC. Reach out to her directly. We'll post that phone number a little later and on LinkedIn, Eulela Bushnell. Dr. Bushnell, please introduce yourself, share details about your consulting firm, what services you provide, and how people can get in touch with you.
Thank you so much. First, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share my knowledge and expertise and my experience. My name is Dr. Yulela Bushnell. I am the owner of Bushnell Human Resource Consulting. Been in business since 2005. I have a dual kind of practice where I work for both the companies and also employees hire me. So I handle anything HR related from benefits, open enrollment, recruiting, anything in the the HR industry. I have experience and the education to work through any type of issue, especially employee relations issues. I am located in the Texas area, and you can definitely reach out to me at info at HR Employee Advocate or join my YouTube channel where I give daily uh, tips and tricks about the employment arena, just making sure that people know how to handle themselves while at work. In the near future, I'm starting to talk about what your first 90 days should look like, what it should look like after, a layoff or termination. So I handle anything HR related. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bristow, for that introduction. So I know personally that I have been reviewing your pages and love some of the tips that you provide. So, but before we kick things off and get into this deep dive, please make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Be sure you hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all of our future live streams, and also get the notification for any other live streams going forward. So now let's get into this key. So Dr. Bushnell, like I said, have been reviewing your Facebook page in detail, and literally I went through and there were some things in there I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. And so I'm so glad that you're joining us today to kind of talk through some of those key tips. I picked out a few of them that I thought would be perfect for our audience today. So let's kick it off by your job tip number 159, which is talking about um I lost my notes. Um Talking about the internet and job loss, where you discuss people who are laid off or getting terminated and the do's and don'ts of social media and talking about severance agreements. So do you want to go into a little bit more detail about that job tip, work experience tip number 159?
Absolutely. One of the things that I see in social media, being on there daily, is that I see a lot of people get on and talk about their termination experience or their layoff experience before talking to somebody in HR or talking to someone in the legal field. What I tell them when I log on, I see that, I always respond by saying, before you share this with the world, share it with an attorney or a legal advisor, because what you say on the internet, you have to say again to them. And 9 times out of 10, when they're on the internet, they're upset, they're stressed, they're going to leave things out that they should have shared, and it's going to be 2 different versions of the story. So I always encourage people to, before you go to the internet, seek out some advice, reach out to the EEOC, reach out to your local Human Rights Commission, reach out to NAACP. They have lawyers. Reach out and talk to somebody before you get out there and you share with social media. Another thing with the severance agreement, I have a lot of people that say they'll post their severance agreement online. Don't do that. Or they automatically get the severance agreement and they sign it without reading it. Severance agreements are put together for a reason. So you want to make sure of several things. What it says, is it, have somebody from the legal team review it. If you don't have a lawyer, you can't afford a lawyer, have someone else read it. Get an HR professional to read it, because sometimes severance agreements, and I've seen this, people are signing away their rights to sue. They're signing away some of the rights to their 401ks. I've seen that most recently. They're signing away the right to things that they might be eligible if there's a class action down the road. Some people are signing away their rights to file for unemployment after their severance runs out. So you really want to read those severance agreements. You want to read it from start to finish. See what you're signing away. Again, if it is not a benefit to you, if you're financially in a case, and most people may not be, I would not sign a severance agreement without having somebody read it that understands the legalese, because people give away a lot of their rights. And the number one thing I see now is people are signing away their right for unemployment and future class action lawsuit abilities. So you want to make sure you read through that.
Yeah, I think Lakeisha and I talked about that in one of our previous episodes where we discussed the importance. Oh, I think there was an echo there. Sorry. Where we discussed the importance of reading the severance agreement. I know we both had to read through ours in detail. We were in a different situation where we had no choice but to sign it, because if we didn't sign it, we didn't get anything. But we still took the time to read through it to make sure we understand that, there was no non-complete complete
Yes.
that we were able to apply for unemployment benefits. It outlined our severance and when we would get our severance. So it was important for us to still read it. But the truth of the matter is in our situation, and Lakeisha, you can elaborate here as well. We kind of didn't have a choice but to sign it, simply because it was the only way that we would get our severance. But in that agreement, it was specifically saying you're giving up your rights to sue later on. You have, this is your final recourse. So once you sign it, that's it.
Yes.
I wanted to go deeper into losing the 401k. Companies are actually putting that in those separation agreements.
So remember, sometimes when a company is closing, they're financially strapped. So they may not have the money, even though you paid into it, to pay out your portion. So the portion that you pay, and you're definitely, you could definitely sue them if they tried to keep your portion. But remember, a lot of companies have matching. And so sometimes they're not able to pay out the matching. And that's what you want. You want to read all the fine print, especially the small fine print, to make sure you understand what you're giving up.
Yeah.
And I understand what you said, Ken, about not you don't get it. You have no choice. You always have a choice. There's yes. And you always, again, it's always good to have somebody read over it, read the fine print. It's just, I have so many, especially a lot of young people, first job, a severance, they don't even know what a severance agreement is, and it's a legal binding contract. And yes, people will retrieve it. And, most legal professionals say, read it, change it. You can alter the terms of the severance agreement by countering that. If they gave you 90 days and you need 6 months of benefits, counter. So that's another option to the severance agreement. And most people don't know that. It's like a negotiation process. So, and again, when you're in a layoff, you're being turned 100 different directions. And number one is, how do I keep money coming through my family? So I understand the need to sign it. But I always want to make sure that you are in charge of you. You got to take care of yourself and make sure that you're seeking advice on that before you you sign your rights away. Excuse me.
Very good practical advice. So yeah,
Yes.
very good point. I want to circle back to something we talked about at the beginning, which is
Sure.
the going to the social medias to express your concerns. I I see this with the younger generation. I'm not trying to
Mhm.
age myself, but
Mhm.
they get on um, TikTok or they get on Instagram and they're like, I got fired today. And then they go into this whole spiel. And I think what people don't realize when they do that, they're actually pulling themselves out of the job market for a potential employer because
Correct.
that's on their social media. And a
Correct.
lot of companies now do kind of check your social media. And if
Oh, we
you're on
do.
there griping about your previous employer or
Yes.
telling why you got terminated, and
Mhm.
I think that that's kind of a not a good sign for people who are actively looking for a job after you've been terminated. Now, with that being said, Lakeisha and I started this platform
Mhm.
talking about our layoff experience. But one of the key things that that we did that was very important for us is that we did not uh, express any anger or animosity, and we
Mhm.
also didn't talk about the company in detail. As a matter of fact,
Correct.
we never mentioned the company's name, so that way we were not in breach of our severance agreement. Does that make sense what
Yes.
I'm saying there?
Yes, absolutely. And you're 100% right. These, I'm on TikTok every day. I see it daily, and people don't understand the internet is forever. It doesn't go away just because you delete it. Remember, somebody's already tagged 100 people in it. So that information is out there. And companies are coming back now and suing these people for bad information. I just saw one today where the young lady was being mistreated at work and she recorded it. And even though she was being mistreated, they have a policy on recording in the store. So, they ended up taking, her off her job.
Yeah.
Even though, the reason why she was recording, she wanted somebody to see how she was being treated. There's a way to do that. You don't want to get on and tell your story. Never, never. You don't want to get on and tell your termination story, especially if you're bad mouthing. We've seen that all over the
Oh yeah.
internet,
Yeah.
where you don't even say the company name, but people, these detectives, these these social media detectives want to find out where you work, where you live, how you live in, what you drive, and they
Yeah.
will do that. They will
Yeah.
search you down and figure out where you work. And we see that daily. And so, I just encourage young people, before you hit social media, remember this is for life and you got to find another job. Same with us. I'm on social media. I'm in social action chair. And, I'm very, vocal about what I dislike and like
Mhm.
about things that are happening in this world. And I have to be careful because I'm
Absolutely.
HR, so, I just encourage people, before you get on there and post it, think about
Yeah.
it. Think
Very
before
good
you
point.
say it.
Yes, very good points. Very good point. So I know we have somebody else that's joined us on the live stream. Please be note that the chat is also open. So if you have any questions, feel free to put comments in the chat, and we'll certainly answer those. If you have any specific questions for Dr. Bushnell, we'll make sure that those get answered. So feel free to put that in the chat as well. So
Yes.
that kind of leads us next into our job work experience tip number 164, which
Okay.
is how the job search has changed in 2025. In
Mhm.
that tip, you specifically talk about AI powered tools and how AI is kind of coming to the forefront of that. So, do you want to go into more detail about that work experience tip?
Sure. As someone that's out, as a contractor and a business owner, we're always looking for contracts. I'm in the same market as someone looking for a job because I'm looking for contracts. I'm looking to grow my business. So one of the things I see in as someone who helps others with resumes is I see people that will send me a draft of a resume that clearly right off the gate I can tell you that it's been done by AI. Because when I'm doing a resume and I see that, then I start to quiz you on your resume, and most of the people that have it done by AI can answer a single question. They
Wow.
can't tell me. I give them specific terminology from that, and they're like, "Oh, it says that." So AI is it's a great tool to use in the job search, but what I encourage you to do is write it out in your own words, and use AI to assist you in maybe saying it a little better.
Yeah.
We do that as resume writers. I do resumes from the start, but sometimes I realize that the words are just not coming. And everything you need to do your resume is on the internet. That's why nobody should be paying a whole lot of money. You should
Yeah.
be paying for the time of the person doing the resume, but $300 or $400 to do a resume, no. No,
Yeah.
no, it should, because everything you need is out there on the internet. It's right at your fingertips. You can, most resumes are built from job descriptions and job postings. So in using AI, again, great benefit, great tool. If you're going to use it and to create your resume, don't put your personal information out there, because
Yeah.
that's how AI, it shares that information. It's out there on the internet. People know where you live. So don't do that. I see a lot of our young ones doing that. Do not put your personal information, just copy and paste the inners of your resume, but don't put your name, address, your phone number stuff and send that to Chat GPT to change. Don't do that.
Yeah.
That puts your information out there, and that's a safety issue. Also, if you're using AI to do your resume, make sure that you can explain your resume, because I'm going to quiz you from start to finish on your competencies. I'm going to ask you about your education. I've seen AI change education where it said, because the person didn't spell something right, so it had the wrong college. And so when I asked the question about the college, I said, that must be a typo. You've got to be able to explain everything on your resume. And most people are going to be looking at resume to ask you questions. So if you're going to use AI, make sure you can explain what AI suggests that your resume can say.
Agreed. I know
Yes.
I've used it to kind of enhance. I use Chat GPT and other AI tools all the time to help
Yes.
enhance my sentence structure, or for
Yes.
grammatical errors,
Yes.
punctuation errors, and things like that. But I think what's key there is that you need to know what's on your resume, so that when you're asked about it, you know what you're talking about, and you can back up what's there. You know.
Correct. And
Yeah.
that's why part of my business is to, once I do your resume and I send it to you and I say, hey, go over each bullet point to make sure that you can explain to me that you can do these things. And so I try, some people will go through the interview process with me. We'll do a mock interview. And if they can't answer a question based on how that resume is written, then we have to reword it, because I'm not going to be in the interview seat with you. You're going to be there by yourself. So I need you to be able to explain your resume.
Yeah. And Lakeisha, anything you want to add there?
No, I mean, I agree. AI is amazing. And yes, using it to update or improve sentence structure, I
Mhm.
think that is a really good point to share. Um, Dr. Bushnell, any other do's and don'ts when it comes to AI that you can share?
Um, really monitor what you're asking AI to do. Again, excellent benefit. AI is awesome. I use it daily to write policies and things like that. But the bottom line is, the information that it spits out, you've got to be able to explain, no matter if it's a policy, if it's a draft of your resume, if it's a contract, you've got to be able to talk through those contracts. So whatever terminology it changed your contract to, you've got to be able to explain that. So you definitely want to make sure that you're reading through what their suggestions are. And another benefit of it, for especially those looking for jobs, is that take a job posting and put it in Chat GPT or one of these other AI, and let it pick out the keywords. That way, when you're building your resume, those keywords that Chat GPT pulls out from the job posting, you should be using in your resume for that particular job posting. I talk to people all the
Great.
time that nobody should be telling me that they applied for 400 to 500 jobs. Yeah, and not getting any hits, that's a waste of your time. You really have to be specific with your resume and the job posting. They
Yeah.
should, most of that language should be in your resume.
Yeah. 100% agree. So that kind of brings us to our next work tip, which
Okay.
is 165, where you talk about your resume roundup. So I'm going
Okay.
to go ahead and share the screen again here. and let you talk us through what your resume roundup is about
Okay.
and what people can expect. I will be the first to say that I use Dr. Bushnell for my resume writing. So this is an amazing service that she offers. So Dr. Bushnell, tell us more about your resume roundup and what people can expect.
Thank you. And thank you both for using being part of Resume Roundup. I started it about a year ago, and I just originally I sent it out to just my sorority sisters, and just as a way to kind of help give back to the sorority, because I knew people were losing their jobs, people were being laid off, and in our chapter, I've kind of become the one of the HR gurus. There are many of us, but one that people tend to turn to for questions regarding jobs and just problems at work. And so I figured if it was successful one year, let me go out and go to the public. So last year I posted on my Facebook, and I just started sharing it, and the feedback I got was overwhelming. What I do is I do a basic, I have someone send me the resume and a job posting. So I build a resume, and I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm HR consultant. So when I have a core HR consulting resume, but depending on the industry, whether it be finance or healthcare or legal, my resume is going to change. An HR consultant for the legal field is different than an HR consultant for healthcare. So I always make sure that when I'm doing your resume, I know the industry that you're in, I know what you're looking for, and I keep the resumes kind of, I don't have a lot of lines on it. I have, you'll see a lot of bullet points. You'll see a competency section. You'll see an education section, but I try to keep it as clean as possible to feed into these new ATS systems and these new AI systems that these companies are using. So that's kind of where the resume roundup started, and I've just kind of continued it on. It's been a successful venture for me as another component of my consulting arena, and it gives me the opportunity from doing this. I started also mentoring. Another component of my business is I started mentoring young HR professionals that are trying to upscale their career path. And so out of resume writing, a mentorship program started. So
Yeah. So I think one of the key things that I took away when I was working with you in doing my resume was, and this is something I had not thought about, and perhaps maybe a lot of other people don't think about, but one of the key tips you gave me was to not age myself. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Because that was news to me, and I've been doing that, using that format going forward, even when I'm having to write out the apply for a job on the internet and it's asking me about the years of experience. I do my best to not age myself, but I'm going to let you give a little bit more about that tip because I found that one quite useful.
Yes, that's one of the things that we've been working hard with, especially the workers that have been at the same company for 10 and 15 years and haven't had to do a resume in this new type of job search in the 2025. In the system, what I encourage people to do is not to put education, not to put the year they graduated. And that's because companies are trying to figure out your age. And so put I got an MBA from Tuscaloosa University, and that's it. They don't, unless you graduated in 2025, do not put the year you graduated college on your resume. Do not put the year that you took a certification. That's another thing that I'm seeing is I have a gentleman I'm working with now that has 20 years experience, and he put that he took a certification 10 years ago. Although it required, the job posting required that certification, he just didn't need to know, because number one is you're trying to get the interview. So what you don't want them to do is figure out your age by putting the year that you took a certification or the year you did an internship. That information can be left off your resume, because you definitely want to keep it ageless. And in this day and in age, even though age discrimination is on the rise, we encourage people to keep it. Don't put certain information.
Yeah.
Even the way people put their summary of qualification, how you use, what terminology you use can age you. And so that's what I work with a lot of people on is, how they do their resume. People are still putting references per request. No, I've seen people put pictures.
Guilty.
No, um,
Guilty.
people still putting their full address. No. So there's just a lot of things that we, in trying to keep it ageless to include, I'm a member of NAACP. I don't put that on my resume because race is another thing that people are trying to figure out. I have a different name. Yalela is a different name. So, I'm going to keep them guessing on my name. But, my job is not to rule out anything, to take anything off my resume that a company can rule me out. My age, my race. Sometimes, they don't know the gender, but, you can kind of tell based on certain types of jobs, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think I think one of the other tips when talking about not aging yourself is that technically, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in saying this, but you really only need to go back 10 years on your
Correct.
work experience. I learned that from you as well.
Yes, excellent point. Yes, in this job market, you only need to go back 10 years. And I have a lot of clients say, and myself included, well, I have 30 years experience. And that's good, but you don't want to let anybody know that because then they know they're trying to figure out how old you are. So if the job posting says, I'm looking for an HR director with 10 years, your summary of qualifications should say HR director with 10 plus years. That's it. If that job posting says, I'm looking for an HR director with 4 years, even though you have 30, HR director with 4+ years, you're trying to get your resume to feed into the ATS system. So you need to mimic what that job posting. If it says, I have a PhD, but if the job posting asks for an MBA, MBA is all they see. Now, number one, once I get into the job, once I get the interview and I can get in and say, well, actuality, I have a PhD. You can always sell up. You
Right.
just can't sell down.
Right.
So I follow what's on the job posting.
Yeah.
So again, that goes into where I mentioned, putting the alphabet at the end of your name. Not every company needs a PhD. As a consultant, the PhD works well. But if I were in corporate America doing an HR director and they're just looking for somebody with a BA is what I'm going to put on my resume.
Yeah, very good. Very good points there. Excellent points. So that takes us now into our work tip number 172, which is where you talk about mental health. Before we go into there, Lakeisha, did you have anything you wanted to add on the resume roundup or resume building?
No, all good information. All good information.
All
Good.
right, let me bring this up then. Because tip number 172 is your mental health. And I think a lot of people don't take that into consideration. I know for me, I had a little bit of a mental health struggle. Lakeisha and I have spent many days on the phone talking through that. But I think mental health is very key. So I'm going to share a screenshot of of this post that you have. And you can pick walk us through your key points here, and when it comes to making sure you stay in tune with your mental health.
Okay. And the reason why I put together this post is I'm starting to get a lot of referrals from licensed therapists whose employees are seeking them out for mental health treatment, but it's work related. And so they may, therapists can cover everything, but there's some things in the work arena that you want to talk to HR. So I don't necessarily have I'm not a certified therapist or anything, but I do know HR. I study it every day. I read about it every day, and I wrote about it. My dissertation is the effects of termination on African American women in North Texas. So losing a job and going through the job search can be like a death. You're going to go through all phases of, the grieving process because, like I said, some of you guys have worked at companies for 10 and 20 years. It's all
Yeah.
you know. So, to be removed from that, it is like a death. So daily, I walk people through what that process is. And one of the things I tell them is you got to grieve it. we come from an era, and I might be aging myself, where, we're told to, pull your big girl panties up and keep going. And
Right.
that's all good and fine. But in this day, in 2025, we need therapy. And it's good that you and Keisha have one another and can share, the issues that you're having on the day to day. But some people don't have anybody. And that's where someone like me comes in. We talk you through the process. We let you know that it's okay to feel sad, mad, angry, scream. What I tell my clients is, do not discard your feelings. Do not set them aside. Feel them. Be mad. It is okay for you to be mad. I talk about the job search itself, because you're coming out of a state of shock, and then you got to go into a state of, oh, I got to keep going. So from shock to, what's going to happen now? And, oh, I got to apply for unemployment, but I've never done it. Oh, I got to look for a job, but what is that like? So you're going through all these phases, and that's where talking to a professional, definitely, I encourage people to get some type of therapy. But here we come, if it's work related, I talk to people about their careers and where they want to go. A lot of people being laid off now want to transition out of what they were doing. And what does that look like? So I talk people through that process. I listen to people cry. Some people just want to cry. And sometimes the spouse, who is now the primary breadwinner, is so busy trying to keep the family afloat that they don't have time to listen to you, cry. So here we are. There's where a therapist is. I talk about all the different things to take care of your mental health. Looking for a job is a full-time job. And so I talk about taking a walk, spending time with family, definitely spend time with family, spending time with yourself. As someone who's been laid off 3 times since relocating in Texas, I had to learn to make sure that I gave myself grace. I had to change my environment. Being at home in front of my computer, looking for a job every day starts to wear on you. You got to get out of the house, So I started, that was the day of that post. I had talked to a client that was referred to me from a counselor, and I just wanted to let everybody know, do something different. Don't allow the job search to stress you out. Update your LinkedIn, but set a time frame for your job search. I'm going to look for jobs every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 9 to 11, and then I'm going to go on a walk. Then I'm going to go get Starbucks. Then I'm going to go read a book. I'm going to go do all these different things. Prepare yourself during this time frame. Go get your headshot done. Go do the things that you wanted to do, but you were too busy working to do it. Now you have time. Don't just make your life about trying to find another job. And that's what people do. They're so involved that I got to work because they got bills, and I understand it. But my job is to make sure that you take care of you, so that when you get that new job, you're not stressed to the max, because who wants a stressed out employee?
Yeah, very true. Lakeisha, do you want to add something there?
No, I mean, you touched on the grieving process, right?
Yeah.
I don't think people put a lot of thought into that. You have to allow yourself to feel. And like you said, whatever that may be, if it's, sad, if it's mad, if it's, happy,
Yes.
I do know for me, I went through everything, I had my high days, I had my low days.
Still do.
And then, yeah, absolutely. And then, somewhere in between days,
Yes.
so
Yes.
I think it's definitely good to go through those feelings, go through those emotions, and give yourself grace. That is so important.
Yes.
Yeah.
And don't just go through them feeling, feel those emotions. Don't set them aside, because that's when things start to break down. That's when the mental health comes through, and you got to make sure that you're taking care of you, because eventually you're going to go back into the workplace, and you don't want to go back sick. So you gotta, and look for people outside of your family to have discussions with. Doesn't necessarily need to be an HR professional or a therapist. That your church members, connect with other people that are in that same area. But don't, give yourself time to stand there for a little bit, but you got to move on. So make a plan. With me, I write down everything. Okay, what am I going to do next? And that's, the times that I've been laid off, that's what helped me. Okay, what am I going to do next? What do I got to do first? Okay, I got to make sure this. I got to make sure this. So I kind of did, created myself a plan, and I just every day I would check something off, and I just made it so that I just did one thing. My job search was limited to 3 days a week, and then I want to learn to walk. I went to the gym. I met friends for lunch. So I started, and that's what made me say, you know what, other people, you can't just live in the job search. It's not, it can be wearing. It can be very
and
wearing.
because it could be frustrating. I think Lakeisha and I did an episode previously about that, where we talked about that frustration and the rejection letters, because you spend all this time applying for jobs, but then you get the rejection. So not only are you stressed because you are having to look for work, but then when you get the rejection letters, that's a whole nother level of what's the word I'm looking for? A whole
Hurt.
other level where hurt, yes,
Yes.
and disappointment.
Yes.
And sometimes we take that personally to ourselves. It's like, oh, well, what did I do wrong? Why didn't I get, picked? But I think what I've learned for myself personally is that it is not personal. Right now the job market is very crazy. For every job that I apply for, there's hundreds of other applicants. The key for me is to keep my mental health strong.
Yes.
I use Keisha and I as a sound. We have our soundboard that we bounce off of each other. Talking to family and friends also helps. But the main thing there is that I stay focused on what I want to do with my future and not let those rejections. I think I said it in a previous video, like the rejections do not define who you are. Don't let those rejections define who you are. And I think that's something that I try to do every day as I go through this process.
And it's good you mentioned that rejection, because one of the things that we talk as I'm working with the client, even in coaching and mentoring, is people have to deal with. So remember, as I talk to my clients, I said rejection is often redirection, guidance.
I like that.
And there's another word, redirection. It just gives you an alternative. But see, if you're, financially strapped and you're starting to get those letters, it doesn't feel that way. And so what I've got to get my clients to the point is, because I'm somebody with the PhD, I get rejection letters all the time. I get no to, I don't want to do a contract with you. And, in the beginning, it can be kind of wearing because I got to work just like everybody else. But I also looked at it as redirection, another opportunity. As someone who's spiritual, I look at it as that's not where God wanted me to be. That's not the direction He wanted me to go. So you have to start telling yourself rejection is redirection.
Yeah, very good. There was a question. Kimberly put a question in. I'm going to save it. Kimberly, I believe we've answered that, but I'm going to put it on the screen anyway. You asked how far to go. Should we go back in your job history? Again, I think we answered that. That was
You did.
10 years.
Go ahead. Answered it.
Okay. Yes. Did you have any other? Was there anything else you wanted to ask on that?
No, I'm stop asking questions because as soon as I ask, you already have the answer. So.
Well, Kimberly, thank you for being part of for joining us today and being part of the audience. So, and feel free to keep asking the questions. And if you don't put it in the chat, feel free to just jump in and ask, live. So you have that ability as well.
Sorry, I'm not on camera. I'm on medical leave, and so I'm still in my PJs. So sorry.
No worries.
We're glad to have you on.
We're glad to have you on in your PJs.
Thank
You're
you.
good.
Hey, Layla.
Hi.
So that kind of leads us into the next topic, because we've talked about resume building, and this tip, when I saw it, it was one that I just also had not thought about. And I remember I raised my hand a little while ago and said, oh, guilty of that, where you put on your resume references available upon request. But clearly that is not the right way to go about that. So you shared a very good tip on your Facebook page. I'm going to bring that up, and let's talk through this tip 173 on how to create a reference list and the best way to utilize that and not putting that on the resume.
Correct. Now, first of all, if you're going to choose whoever you choose to be a reference, make sure that you're referable. And I think I say that in the post is make sure the person
Yeah.
that you choose to provide your reference is going to do you justice. And
Right.
so when you create your reference list, if you look here, and I just created this because I'm in YouTube, I have to be very neutral because I wanted to use, Michelle Obama, so I just made it Paddington Bear. But it
Right.
says Paddington Bear was the director of operations. That was the title. The company was Bear Street Health Services. I gave the address, and I gave the cell of my contact person plus the email. And then I said, Mr. Bear was the director of Bear Street Health Services and can speak to my project management experience. So when you're given a reference, you want to be able to tell the person reading your reference list what this person's going to speak to. I went to Cinderella and she can speak to my leadership experience. So the reason why I put that paragraph as someone who's reading my reference sheet, and maybe I always give about 4, and maybe they only want to call 2. They might call 3, and they can choose which one they want to talk to. If they want to know about my leadership skills, they can call Miss Umbrella. She would be able to talk to them about my leadership skills. Now, before I list people on a reference, I make sure that I have a call with these. So I make sure that my references have this reference sheet so that they know when someone calls on my behalf what they're calling for. Because I've called references and and it's the mom, or it's someone that doesn't know why they even listed them. So you want, when you're building your reference sheet, make sure it's people that are going to give you a favorable reference, but an effective reference. You don't want them calling, Aunt May, and Aunt May hasn't seen you since you're 17, and she talks about how sweet of a boy you are, and what the company wants to know is about your leadership skills. So you want to make sure that you talk with your references.
Yeah.
And to people who are fired and terminated, this is one of the things that in building references, I get the question of, what should I say if I was fired? What you should say on your application is you moved around for advancement opportunities. Everybody, and if you're lucky to have had the same job for years and never been fired, then that is truly a blessing. But everybody has suffered some type of detachment from a workplace, and so put advancement opportunities. That's not lying. That's not telling untruth. That's you are moving on for advancement opportunities.
Yeah.
So use that as, why did you leave your last position? Advancement opportunities.
Yeah. And I think if you're needing, so if somebody's terminated from
Mm-hmm.
their employment, there are some people within that circle of that organization who would give you a good reference, even though you were terminated. So I think maybe an extra tip there would be, do your homework and speak to the people that you were previously working with and say, hey, can I use you for a reference? And then, like you said, I think it's key that you notify them that you're using them for reference, so that they're not shocked and that they know what they're going to say about you before they're being called by an HR recruiter.
Yes, job loss is not the end of the world. It is not. It is
Yeah.
is it a detour in your on your journey of life?
Yeah.
So it is not the end of the world. And we, as an HR professional, one of the things I like to hone in, and that's why I do a series called 90 Days. That's 90 days starting employment, and that's 90 days ending employment, whether you're laid off or term, is what did that next 90 days look like? And that's why it's good to come up with a plan, a plan of what it looks like when you start a job, and a plan of what it looks like when you're ending. What do you got to do? What are the things that you need? What services are available for you out there? Who can help? Who can you talk to? So, most people don't do that. And I think if we spent more time preparing people to come into the workplace and to exit the workplace, we wouldn't be dealing with a lot of the mental health with people going and harming their coworkers, and going and doing unspeakable things to companies after they're let go. I think there's a way to bring somebody on and to exit that person off.
Yeah. 100% agree. Yeah, 100%. Good tips there. So our last one for today is job tip 174, where you talk about networking and using job boards and social media. So do you want to go in a little bit more detail about job tip 174?
Yes. In that when I wrote that, I was talking about, I had done a little spiel on networking, and people, some people, especially our young, they think networking is getting on social media and writing a post. Sometimes you got to do some face to face. Sometimes you got to call up some people you work with and say, hey, can we meet for lunch so that I can share my job search with you? Remember, we're always on. I don't care if you're in Walmart over the frozen food section, pulling out frozen, Pop-Tarts. You meet people all over the world. I'm constantly meeting people. I'm a thrifter. I met a lady in the thrift store the other day, and that I'm now going to be working with her. And I just said hi, and we started up the conversation about a blouse. And she told me, she started talking about what she's going through. She's been laid off and she doesn't know this. I'm like, hey, this is what I do. So we're constantly on. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know, where you're going to be. So when I say, are you referable? If I show up to Walmart in my bonnet and house shoes, is anybody going to want to work with me? So remember, as you're leaving the house for the day, we're not saying you have to dress up to the nines, but that the opportunity to network in the bank, through the drive-through, at the library. You never know who knows who and who you're going to meet. Excuse me. So you're always on. You always have to be in the mode that the opportunity to meet your future employer could be driving down the street. You don't know who you're going to meet. So as I talk about networking, it is more than just getting on social media and talking to people. You got to get out there. Networking isn't pretty much anything. We're networking right now. We are sitting here, we're networking. So because now I know you, I know what you do, I can refer people to you for your part. So we're networking. So it's in pretty much everything that you do on a daily basis. So make that part of your daily job search as well, to network. Call up those old teachers. I've gotten contracts through old professors at SMU. So you never know who's here. I went through the leadership program in my town, and so I get a lot of referrals from people networking. I talked at a DISD function for young mothers, met some people there, networking. So you never know who you're going to be presented and who you're going to be positioned in front of that might be able to help you in your job search.
Yeah. Very true. Very, very good points here. So, and I certainly am utilizing these more and more, and certainly appreciate all of the expertise and the tips that you've given. So, I mean, we've only touched the surface of some of the great tips that you provide. So we hopefully will have you back again sometime in the very near future to go through some more of your amazing job search tips, because I noticed as well, and please, those who are out there, check out her Facebook page, check out her LinkedIn, because she provides tips not only for the job search, but I think you mentioned this as well. You also have tips for once you get the job, what do you do in that 90 days? And how do you, and so there's a lot more that we can dig into. So we're going to take the opportunity to continue to network with Dr. Bushnell, and we'll have her on again to share some more of her amazing tips. And Dr. Bushnell, we certainly appreciate you coming on with us today, and just giving everyone some additional advice, because we know these things, but sometimes it's always good to hear them again, especially from someone who is an expert in their field. So
Thank you. I
Lakeisha,
appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely. Lakeisha, anything else from you before we start to wind it down today?
No, again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your knowledge. Each one teach one. So thank you so much. Looking forward to
Absolutely.
having you back.
Well,
Yes,
thank you for the
absolutely.
opportunity. And again, excellent what you're doing.
Thank you.
The market is tight, and so don't go at the job search alone. Definitely reach out to some people. Network, talk to one another, communicate about what's going on in your lives. Take care of your mental health. Look at all the things. Like I said, there's nothing that I'm a wordsmith, so I can put a resume together in 45 minutes tops. It does. because that's what I do. Not everybody has that skill set. So reach out to some people. Don't pay a lot of money for your resume. You should not be paying $300 or $400 to get your resume done. Not when the information's out there on the internet. You should
Absolutely.
not. Seek out the help of an HR consultant. We're here. I don't know a lot of people that do what I do from an HR employee advocate side. And I love that part of my business because I like to make sure that people know how to take care of themselves in and out of the workplace. And so
So,
I just appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to showcase myself and my
absolutely.
business.
Absolutely.
Looking
So
forward
there
to
you
doing
have
it
it,
again.
folks. Reach out to Dr. Bushnell if you need some help along your work experience journey. Yeah, like I said, we're going to share her contact details. We shared them during this live event, but we will also share them when I upload the recording to YouTube. I will share them again on there. But reach out to her if you need some additional support in this, job market search, which is impacting not only us, but millions of people at the moment right now. So, with that being said, thank you all for joining us on Talk Time Life Unscripted. If you enjoyed the content, please drop us a comment, drop some blue hearts on the video. Let us know if you have any additional questions. We're happy to answer them. And thanks again for tuning in. Have a great rest of the day. Dr. Bushnell, so appreciate you. And we
Thank
will be
you.
speaking to you again soon. All right.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.